Tanzanian Mystery Chapter 6 Evening Entertainment. The pool was situated to the side of the Caribou Safari Lodge and surrounded by sun loungers, where they found guests relaxing, reading, or watching their children playing in the now cooler late afternoon sun. The water was a brilliant shade of blue and looked inviting, especially after Mary and Scarlet's day in the hot safari car. They enjoyed plunging into the empty pool, which the other guests had by now decided was too cold, and swimming for a few lengths in the chilly water before climbing out and relaxing on a pair of comfortable sun loungers to enjoy the last of the afternoon sunshine. They chose chairs next to two plump ladies in their 60s, each with grey curly hair, who were both wearing bright flowery dresses. They introduced themselves as Frau Müller and Frau Schmidt from Germany. The German women spoke with strong accents, and they enjoyed telling the young women about the animals they had seen in the national park, as well as informing Mary and Scarlet that they were too thin and needed to eat more. The two young women laughed at this comment. "They remind me of my grandmother," Scarlet whispered when the two German ladies weren't listening. Suddenly they heard loud, angry shouts coming from the restaurant. The two friends hastily grabbed their towels and rushed inside to see what all the commotion was, dripping water as they went. The German ladies also followed curiously, at a more leisurely pace. As the four of them entered the room, they saw Jim, still dressed in khaki, sprawled out on his back on the floor near the bar, apparently unconscious. Beside him were an overturned table and chairs. Smashed glasses, broken plates, and cutlery lay scattered beside the tangled tablecloth. Sue Ellen, now wearing a simple black dress and cardigan, knelt beside him, wailing for the doctor, while a group of porters hastily chased after a tall, dark-haired man, dressed in a dusty khaki shirt and shorts, who was running away from the scene. "What happened?" asked Mary, bewildered, as she also knelt beside Jim to check if he was all right. "Travis," stammered a shocked Sue Ellen. "I found the pair of them arguing in here about money. Then Travis suddenly pushed his father into this table. Jim banged his head, and Travis ran off. My poor Jim," she wailed pitifully. "I'm sure he'll be all right," Scarlet reassured her, as Dr. Grace hurried over to them, wearing her usual white uniform. She was accompanied by Hassani, the good-looking barman, and Mr. Samuel, the lodge manager, whose usually impeccable suit had become slightly askew in his rush to find help. Soon Travis was roughly escorted back into the restaurant by four porters, who did not look at all amused by the incident. They sweated and panted with the effort of dragging the strong, tall Texan back to the scene of the perceived crime. "Well, what do you have to say for yourself?" asked Sue Ellen furiously, as her son was dragged closer to the group huddled around Jim. "I was just playing cards with the barman," Travis replied wearily. Mary glanced at the cards and plastic poker chips strewn across the otherwise pristine bar. She hadn't noticed them before, and guessed they had also been knocked over in the argument. "I was at the bar, and Dad was sitting over there." Travis indicated a comfy sofa nearby. "He was using the Wi-Fi to check his emails on his phone, as he says it doesn't work in his tent. Then he suddenly started yelling at me about some email he'd gotten. He came over angrily waving his phone at me and kept shouting. I yelled for him to get out of my face, but he didn't stop, so I pushed him away. He stumbled backwards and hit his head on that table. I didn't mean to push him so hard. I just wanted him out of my face." He spoke shakily as he told the story. "Tisk, tisk, such a temper!" Frau Schmidt exclaimed, frowning at the young man. Travis's angry red face looked around to see everyone glaring at him, except for the doctor, who was still checking Jim's vitals. I didn't mean to push him so hard," Travis repeated sorrowfully. "But why did you run?" Mary inquired seriously. "Oh, because I was mad. Then those guys started chasing me like I was some kind of criminal." He pointed to the group of porters, who were still listening attentively. My staff acted in the way they thought best, Mr. Samuel explained. He had straightened his clothes while listening to the explanation and looked composed and authoritative once more. Now, while this may have been an accident, I think it would be best if you would stay away from the bar and restaurant for the time being. Mr. Samuel spoke in a calm, measured way, yet there was no mistaking the firmness in his voice. I cannot have you disturbing the other guests again. With that, Travis shrugged and slunk out of the bar sulkily, not wanting to be escorted by the porters again. At his exit, and on the manager's command, the porters and waiting staff began to tidy the area and continue setting up the restaurant for the evening meal. Mary noticed Mr. Samuel giving Hassani a warning look at the sight of the scattered poker chips. We weren't playing for real money, sir. It was just for fun. The barman apologized nervously as he tidied them. The manager nodded gravely at this explanation and briskly dispersed the crowd that had gathered, leaving only the doctor and Sue Ellen nearby Jim. Mary and Scarlet watched from a few feet away as, to everyone's relief, the man began to come round. Oh, thank goodness you're okay, Sue Ellen cried, full of relief. We were so worried about you. I'm fine, don't fuss, Jim grumbled as the doctor and Mr. Samuel helped him into a seated position and Sue Ellen lovingly kissed his cheek. Come, let us take you to the clinic where you can rest and get better in peace, the manager urged. Still feeling dazed, Jim agreed as the group of porters hurried over to help him to stand and walk slowly towards the clinic. What a crazy afternoon, Scarlet muttered. By now the sun had set and the women were shivering in their cold, wet swimming costumes and towels. Other guests were filling the restaurant and beginning to eat their delicious evening meals, unaware of the chaos that had taken place just moments ago. Mary and Scarlet hurried to retrieve their shoes and returned to their tent to shower and dress. Mary even tried to rinse some of the mud out of her safari clothes. She laid them out to dry around the tent, which no longer looked quite as pristine as it had on their arrival, despite the efforts of the housekeeping staff to tidy some of the mess while they had been out. I wonder what that email said that made Jim so mad, Scarlet asked contemplatively, while seated on her bed and brushing her long blonde hair. She was wearing a flowery maxi dress, high-heeled sandals, and bright red lipstick. Maybe someone was asking him for money, Mary replied pensively, toweling her own hair roughly. She had also decided to wear a summery dress in order to save her remaining clean shorts and trousers for more safari drives. Scarlet had managed to convince Mary that the small rips left in her shorts by the branches on the previous day made them look trendy. She had even offered to tear them further, like her own pair of ripped jeans, but Mary had categorically refused this offer, not wanting to cause further damage to them. Oh, what makes you say that? Scarlet asked curiously. Just a guess, Mary replied. Sue Ellen said she heard them arguing about money, and yesterday at dinner, Jim said something to Travis about needing to pay him back. Maybe he needed the money for something else and was angry that he didn't have it yet. I guess that's possible, Scarlet agreed. What do you think Travis needs to pay his dad back for? It can't be college fees, because he didn't expect Jolene to pay him back for that, she mused. It's hard to say, Mary responded. They continued talking and contemplating the mystery as they walked along the softly lit path to the warm, cozy restaurant. Once there, they found Ned, Larry, and Jolene tucking into plates piled high with delicious food from the buffet. The two men wore jeans and colourful shirts, while Jolene wore a black cardigan and a low-cut red dress that showed off her figure. Mary wondered if she was trying to impress someone with her outfit and scanned the room for her potential admirer. How's Jim? Scarlet asked, while Mary frowned at the barman, who seemed to be looking surreptitiously in their direction. Oh, fine, thanks, Larry replied with a grin. After seeing what he ate for dinner yesterday, the waiters took him a plate of barbecued meat to the clinic, and one even volunteered to go to his tent and bring him some of his beloved sauces. He was soon feeling better, apart from the sore head. The doctor wanted him to stay at the clinic longer to rest, Ned added with a wry smile, but he sneaked out when she had to help another guest with a sprained ankle. I'm sure he and Sue Ellen will be along soon. Yes, he sent us a message about the plateful of food not being big enough, so he was still hungry, Larry joked. Mary and Scarlet collected their own meals from the buffet, carefully avoiding the goat and ugali this time. Once seated with their friends, Mary asked, So, do you know what Jim's email was about? The one that made him so angry? Oh, well, I'm not sure we should tell you, Ned replied awkwardly. My brother is an idiot. That's what the email was about, Jolene replied tersely. Anyway, let's forget about it and enjoy our evening. Mary and Scarlet were disappointed to not find out more about the situation. To change the subject, Larry explained that there would be a show on the veranda at 9 o'clock with traditional music and dancing. The group were excited to see the entertainment and chatted about the pleasant events of the day. While they were talking, Mary continued to wonder about the problems between Jim and Travis and suspiciously kept an eye on the flirtatious looks that transpired between Jolene and the barman. Jim and Sue Ellen joined them after a while. Jim was dressed once more in a flamboyant Hawaiian-style shirt and shorts, with a red baseball cap covering the bandage that the doctor had insisted on wrapping around his bumped head. His wife had changed once again into a pale green dress this time. Perhaps her black one had become dirty while kneeling on the ground beside her knocked-out husband this afternoon, Mary thought. Jim loaded his plate with his usual assortment of barbecued meats, while his wife opted for a lighter meal of a salad and small steak. They both seemed in a pleasant mood, although Mary put this down to the fact that nobody dared to mention Travis. When it was almost 9 o'clock, Mr. Samuel announced that the exciting evening entertainment would begin on the veranda. At his direction, many of the guests began to file out of the restaurant and take up their seats outside. Having finished their meals, Mary, Scarlet, and their American friends joined the group, carrying their glasses of wine to enjoy during the performance. Mary noticed Ned slipping away, carrying a plate of food, which she guessed was for the banished Travis. The veranda was a raised area of decking at the front of the lodge building. From there they had a wonderful view of the rows of tents, illuminated by the lamps positioned along the paths. A fire had been lit in a sort of circular brick structure in the middle of the veranda, and a few rows of wooden chairs had been arranged in a wide semicircle around it, leaving one side of the decking free to act as the stage for the performers. Guests were already seated and enjoying the warmth of the flames in the cool night air. Luckily, there were enough empty chairs for the group to sit together. They settled in the front row next to the two German ladies they had met that afternoon. Guten Abend, Frau Muller greeted them politely. Mary noticed that they were both carrying enormous handbags and wondered how much stuff they had thought they would need to bring with them for dinner and an evening show. The bag she had brought was small, just large enough for her phone, a packet of tissues, and some money for the bar. Unfortunately, she had not thought to bring her camera, which would have been useful for taking photos of the dancers, but she didn't want to risk going to collect it from the tent and miss the start of the performance. Where's Ned? Jim asked, looking around suspiciously. Oh, he needed the bathroom, Larry lied. Jim seemed satisfied by the explanation and pointed up at the night sky. Mary looked up and Larry began to point out a few of the constellations, which were different than the ones she was used to viewing from her garden back home. Mary was amazed at the awe-inspiring vastness of the night sky. She was sure that the sky felt bigger in Africa than it did in England. She was certainly able to see more stars, constellations, and swirling galaxies from the veranda, and assumed that it must have something to do with the lack of buildings and city lights. Beautiful, isn't it? Scarlet murmured. Just then 6 performers began to dance towards the stage. They chanted and moved in unison, in a kind of bobbing motion, each tapping a long cane on the floor to the rhythm. Each performer sang a different melody, which blended perfectly to form the traditional song. Mary found their appearance striking. The performers were a group of tall, smooth-skinned Maasai men with long braided hair. They wore a multitude of beads around their necks, arms, and ankles, and garments made of checked blue, orange, and red fabric, similar to the material used for the cushions in the bar and blankets in the tent. Once the song had finished, the audience clapped, and the tallest of the performers stood forward to greet them. "Are you wearing a dress?" Jim called out jokingly, causing his embarrassed family to shush him. "This is a traditional garment worn by my people, the Maasai, for generations," the performer replied haughtily. Sue Ellen apologized for her husband's rude comment, while Mr. Samuel rushed over to beg Jim to not offend the performers or interrupt the show again. Meanwhile, the proud Maasai introduced the other dancers and explained that they came from a nearby village where their ancestors had lived for many years. They then performed a series of traditional dances, each involving different songs, rhythms, and movements. Mary's favourite dance was the one which required the men to jump in the air. She was amazed at how high they could leap and tried to look at their feet to see if they had springs attached to the bottoms of their sandals. At the end of this dance, the same performer who Jim had insulted invited a few members of the audience to join them. To everyone's surprise, Jim was the first to volunteer. He enthusiastically rushed to the stage and apologized for his previous comment while heartily slapping the confused man on the back. A few tourists who Mary did not recognize joined him. Not wanting to miss her chance to enjoy the spotlight, Scarlet also stepped forward, dragging the reluctant Mary with her. She passed her phone to Sue Ellen and asked her to make a video of their dance. Mary groaned as she knew it would be posted on Scarlet's social media within minutes for friends back home to laugh at her terrible dancing. The performers sang and jumped again, indicating for the tourists to copy them. Mary enjoyed bouncing to the rhythm. Even though she could not leap anywhere near as high as the talented Maasai, she was at least happy that she could not look as silly as Jim, who needed to hold onto the waistband of his shorts with every jump he attempted to stop them from falling down. The other guests clapped and laughed, thoroughly entertained by the spectacle. Others stood up and bounced along to the rhythm in front of their own chairs. While dancing, Mary saw Mr. Samuel and some porters standing to the side of the audience, clapping joyfully, obviously pleased at how well the evening was going. She was surprised to see that Travis had accompanied Ned to watch the show. They stood at the very back of the audience, as if hoping to not be noticed by Jim or the lodge manager. When the dance finished, Mary quickly ducked back to her seat while Scarlet, Jim, and other volunteers took a moment to enjoy the applause. "That was brilliant," Larry congratulated her. She thanked him and pointed at where Ned and Travis were standing. Larry glanced over and shrugged. "I don't blame Travis for coming to see the show," he told her. "I mean, would you have wanted to miss it?" Mary was about to reply that she thought it was better to follow the rules imposed by the lodge manager, but she was interrupted by Jim and Scarlet returning to their seats. Once the guests had settled back in their seats, the performers bowed, thanked the audience, and left the stage to the sound of another rapturous round of applause. Then Mr. Samuel announced that guests were welcome to remain on the terrace for another hour or so to dance or sing karaoke. Joseph the porter was to be their DJ for the evening. He had positioned a couple of large speakers at the edge of the veranda and welcomed the guests to choose songs at his mixing deck, which was really the wooden table where he stood with a laptop. Frau Schmidt and Frau Muller were the first to volunteer for karaoke. They rushed forwards to request their song and surprised everyone by choosing to sing Dancing Queen while tapping their feet and waving their arms from side to side enthusiastically. The song sounded funny with their warbling voices and strong German accents, but Mary and her friends agreed that they did a great rendition and congratulated their efforts. Ned and Larry got up next to sing The Lion Sleeps Tonight, which the other guests joined in with merrily. Then Jim decided it was his turn, choosing to croon I Did It My Way in his best impersonation of Frank Sinatra. A few other guests volunteered to sing after him, while others danced, chatted, and enjoyed a few more drinks at the bar. Mary noticed that Jolene had taken up a perch at the bar, where she talked animatedly to Hassani, in between guests asking him for a drink. Travis had disappeared again, and Mary wondered if the lodge manager had seen him and sent him away. At the end of the party, Mr. Samuel wished the guests good night, and the weary porters began to tidy the chairs and equipment away as efficiently as they could, while dodging the remaining holiday makers, who continued to mill around chatting. Mary was surprised to overhear one guest, a balding man wearing a checked shirt who had danced on the stage with them, complaining to the manager about his wallet being stolen during the evening. I went to the bar and my wallet wasn't in my pocket anymore, the man explained angrily. Maybe you dropped it, Mr. Samuel suggested calmly. I'm sure we will find it if we look carefully. Mary heard the man reply that he had already searched everywhere for the missing wallet. Unfortunately, she was unable to hear the rest of the conversation, as Jim suddenly interrupted her eavesdropping to ask about her plans for the next day. Oh, I'm not sure, she had replied, startled. Jim promptly invited her and Scarlet to join them on an outing to a nearby Maasai village in the morning. Mary politely agreed and arranged to meet the McKinleys for a late breakfast. She then located Scarlet, who agreed it was time to go to bed after their long day. As they walked, they overheard a second guest, a stocky man with a bristly mustache, complaining to the baffled manager about his missing wallet. I wonder where all these wallets are going, Mary mused. I hope there isn't a thief around. The two women vowed to be extra careful with the belongings just in case, and flopped onto bed, exhausted after their long, eventful day.